A journey through Czech history, from ancient Bohemia to modern Czech Republic. Hello everyone, and welcome to another fascinating journey through time. Today, we're exploring the rich history of the Czech Republic, a tale spanning over a millennium from its early Slavic origins to its current position as a vibrant Central European nation. The Czech story is one of cultural resilience, remarkable intellectual and artistic contributions, and a complex path to independence. So let's embark on this captivating journey through the heart of Europe. Early beginnings and medieval Bohemia. The story of what is now the Czech Republic begins with the arrival of Slavic tribes to the region in the 6th century CE. These early Slavs settled in the lands of Bohemia and Moravia, establishing agricultural communities and gradually developing distinct cultural identities. According to legend, the first Czech dynasty, the Přemyslids, was founded by Přemysl the plowman and his wife, the prophetess Libuš, who supposedly founded Prague. While legendary, these stories reflect the early formation of Czech identity centered around Bohemia. Christianity arrived in the 9th century through two Byzantine missionaries, Saints Cyril and Methodius, who created the Glagolitic alphabet to translate religious texts into Slavic languages. This early evangelization from the East was soon overtaken by Western influence as Bohemia became oriented toward the Latin Church and the Holy Roman Empire. The Přemyslid dynasty reached its height under Ottokar II in the 13th century, who expanded Bohemian territories significantly before his defeat by Habsburg forces in 1278. The dynasty ended with the murder of Wenceslaus III in 1306. The 14th century brought Bohemia's golden age under the Luxembourg dynasty, particularly during the reign of Charles IV, 1346-1378. As both King of Bohemia and Holy Roman Emperor, Charles transformed Prague into one of Europe's most magnificent cities. He founded Central Europe's first university in 1348, now Charles University, constructed the iconic Charles Bridge, and began building St. Vitus Cathedral. Under his rule, Prague became an imperial capital and cultural center. Hussite revolution and Habsburg rule. The early 15th century saw a religious reformation in Bohemia that predated Martin Luther by a century. Jan Hus, a professor at Charles University influenced by English reformer John Wycliffe, criticized church corruption and advocated for church services in the Czech language rather than Latin. His execution at the Council of Constance in 1415 triggered the Hussite Wars, 1419-1434. The Hussites, led by military commanders like Jan Žižka, developed innovative battle tactics using armored wagons that successfully repelled multiple crusades sent against them. After years of conflict, moderate Hussites reached a compromise with the Catholic Church through the Compacts of Basel in 1436. The brief rule of King George of Poděbrady, 1458-1471, a Hussite nobleman, represented an attempt to maintain Bohemian independence and religious tolerance. However, after his death, Bohemia eventually came under the rule of the Jagiellonian dynasty, and then, in 1526, the Habsburgs. Habsburg rule intensified after the Bohemian nobility's failed revolt in 1618-1620, which helped trigger the 30 Years' War. The Protestant Bohemian forces were decisively defeated at the Battle of White Mountain in 1620. The subsequent Dark Age saw forcible re-Catholicization, execution or exile of Protestant nobles, and the suppression of the Czech language in favor of German in administrative and educational settings. Despite these pressures, Czech culture persisted, particularly in rural areas. Baroque architecture transformed Czech towns and countryside with magnificent churches and monasteries built during this period. The Habsburg Empire brought economic integration and administrative modernization, though at the cost of national autonomy, national revival, and path to independence. The late 18th and 19th centuries saw the Czech National Revival, a cultural and political movement seeking to revitalize Czech language and identity. Intellectuals like Josef Dobrovský and Josef Jungmann worked to standardize and promote the Czech language, while historians like František Palacký reinterpreted Czech history to emphasize indigenous achievements. This cultural revival gained political dimensions during the revolutionary year of 1848, when Czech representatives participated in the Slavic Congress in Prague, advocating for greater autonomy within the Habsburg Empire. While these initial political efforts failed, the subsequent decades saw gradual progress in cultural and linguistic rights. Czech arts flourished during this period, with composers like Bedřich Smetana and Antonín Dvořák creating music that celebrated Czech themes and folklore. Literature, theater, and visual arts all contributed to the strengthening national consciousness. The collapse of Austria-Hungary at the end of World War I created the opportunity for independence. Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, working with Czech and Slovak leaders abroad, convinced the Allied powers to support the creation of Czechoslovakia. On October 28, 1918, the independence of Czechoslovakia was declared in Prague, the First Republic and World War II. The interwar Czechoslovak Republic, led by President Masaryk and his successor Edvard Beneš, was a remarkable success story among new European states. It maintained a functioning parliamentary democracy when many neighbors succumbed to authoritarianism. The country developed a strong industrial economy, particularly in Bohemia, and a vibrant cultural life. However, ethnic tensions remained a challenge. The new state included significant German, Hungarian, Ruthenian, and Polish minorities, with Germans constituting about 23% of the population, primarily in the Sudetenland border regions. These tensions were exploited by Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. The 1938 Munich Agreement, signed by Britain, France, Italy, and Germany without Czechoslovak participation, permitted Germany to annex the Sudetenland. This betrayal by Western allies is still remembered as the Munich Dictate in Czech history. In March 1939, Nazi Germany occupied the remainder of the Czech lands, establishing the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, while Slovakia became a Nazi puppet state. The Nazi occupation was brutal, with the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, the Reich Protector, by Czech partisans in 1942, leading to terrible reprisals, including the complete destruction of the villages Lidis and Ležáky. The Jewish population suffered enormously, with most being deported to concentration camps. Of the nearly 120,000 Jews living in the pre-war Czech lands, only about 14,000 survived the Holocaust. Communist era. Following liberation by Soviet and American forces in 1945, Czechoslovakia was restored, though with the loss of Subcarpathian Ruthenia to the Soviet Union. The immediate post-war period saw the expulsion of about 3 million ethnic Germans from the Sudetenland, dramatically altering the country's demographic composition. A coup in February 1948 brought the Communist Party to power, aligning Czechoslovakia firmly with the Soviet bloc. The subsequent Stalinist period under Klement Gottwald saw political purges, collectivization of agriculture, and rapid industrialization focusing on heavy industry. A brief liberalization occurred during the Prague Spring of 1968, when Alexander Dubček's leadership introduced socialism with a human face, including greater press freedom, economic reforms, and reduced censorship. This experiment was crushed by the Warsaw Pact invasion in August 1968, leading to a period of normalization under Gustav Hussite, with renewed ideological conformity and repression of dissent. Opposition to the regime coalesced around Charter 77, a human rights initiative whose signatories included playwright Václav Havel. Though small in numbers, these dissidents maintained an ethical opposition to the regime that would prove crucial during the 1989 Velvet Revolution. Velvet Revolution and beyond. The peaceful Velvet Revolution began with student demonstrations on November 17, 1989. Mass protests followed, coordinated by the Civic Forum movement in the Czech lands and Public Against Violence in Slovakia. With the communist regime unable to maintain control amid broader changes in the Soviet bloc, a peaceful transition of power occurred. By December, Václav Havel had been elected president. The post-communist transition brought both political freedom and economic challenges. Under Prime Minister Václav Klaus, the Czech economy underwent rapid privatization and market reforms. Meanwhile, tensions between Czechs and Slovaks led to the peaceful dissolution of Czechoslovakia on January 1, 1993, creating the independent Czech Republic and Slovak Republic, an event often called the Velvet Divorce. Undefined. The Czech Republic joined NATO in 1999 and the European Union in 2004, firmly anchoring itself in Western institutions. Economically, the country has developed into one of the most successful post-communist states, with a strong industrial base, growing service sector, and relatively high living standards. Contemporary Czech society blends preserved traditions with modern European values. Prague has become one of Europe's most visited cities, known for its preserved medieval architecture and vibrant cultural scene. The country continues to produce notable contributions in literature, film, and the arts, building on its rich cultural heritage. Conclusion. From the medieval kingdom of Bohemia to today's modern European republic, the Czech journey through history demonstrates remarkable cultural resilience. Despite periods of foreign domination, the Czech people maintain their language, traditions, and identity, ultimately achieving independence and democratic governance. What makes Czech history particularly fascinating is how this small nation at the crossroads of Europe has repeatedly influenced developments far beyond its borders. From the pre-Lutheran Hussite Reformation to the inspiring Velvet Revolution that demonstrated how peaceful civic resistance could overcome authoritarian rule. The Czech experience offers valuable insights into Central European history, the complexities of national identity, and the human capacity for cultural persistence against overwhelming odds. Thank you for joining me on this historical journey through Czech history. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating stories of our world's past.